about kind of just like the way I think about AV, like audiovisual work in general, and like why we do this stuff as humans in this world, and like what are we doing with it, and why it's cool and why it's important to me. And I have a very like different background than probably most of you in terms of like how I come to this type of work, which is very informed by like biology in my case. So I think of it as like chaotic, which means messy, embedded, which means kind of like alive, multimodal, sensory mappings, training, which I'm going to talk about what that means in a second. But I think this is like kind of how I think about what an audiovisual performance is or could be. So some roadmap about what I'm going to talk about today. The slides are kind of crappy. They're just kind of placeholders so to like give us a visual reference of like what I'm talking about. But basically I'm going to talk about how I think about audiovisual performance, what it does in the world. I'll show you some of my demos. Hopefully you'll think they're cool. I have 3 of them, and then we'll just have like an open discussion or answer any questions. Yeah, so I like to think about sensory ecology a lot, and I studied evolutionary neuroscience, and I thought about how do senses evolve, and that's a big deal because like we're in this space where we have all these speakers all around us and like all this technology, and what we're really trying to do is like create these sensory experiences. Like in the end, it's like sound that hits your eardrum. So I like to think about like how did this kind of like body and how did my senses come out of interactions that happened long before technology and just like from millions of years of evolution. And so one way that I like to think about how did senses evolve is to look at like co-evolutionary relationships more broadly. So like up there is this flower, and the flower like slightly changes based on the pollinator, the shape of the pollinator. And the flower and the pollinator are in this like really intricate sort of relationship that we might call an audiovisual performance to them, which is like an exchange of sensory signals that ends up shaping like that organism. So it kind of like the way that signals are transmitted like matters for the reproduction of the flower and also for the bees or the pollinator's life cycle too. So in other words, like these sensory signals are not just experiences that pass through us. They shape our bodies. They shape our sensory systems. They shape our brains. They shape our culture. With humans, it's like more we have these like cultural rituals and stuff. But we could say with bees too, there's a lot of rituals and stuff. So so like I think music isn't just about these pleasant or interesting experiences, but it's really like pushing our capacity to sense and to pay attention to signals in an environment. So and then the other pictures are kind of self-explanatory, just like thinking about how we can break it down to like, oh, a pollinator and a bee, but like the more you look at it, it gets really complicated. There's like microorganisms in the soil, and those like also like emit signals. And actually like we're in, at all times we're in like a really rich like signal space. It's just that we only perceive like certain frequencies and certain wavelengths that are like specific to us. So how can like music and especially like audiovisual stuff kind of like help us to perceive more or like have a more open field of awareness around like the signals that are around us at all times. And then so going more into like what this means for humans, because like bees and pollinators, that's like a whole thing, but like for humans, like we have like a lot going on. We have language, we have the somatosensory cortex, which like if you see there's like this homunculus, like there's these magnified areas of the body, and these are areas that are more represented in the brain. So in theory, or I guess like the way neuroscientists think about it is like, well, those areas have more like sensory nerves there. and so that gets expanded in the brain. But this homunculus like changes, like everybody actually has a slightly different homunculus. And so there's been studies on like violin players who use their left hand a lot, and they'll have like a different left hand representation in the brain. And then, different cultures who maybe are more focused on smell, like they might have an expanded smell area. And it's not that these expansions like matter like that much, but it's more that everything we do like shapes us on a biological level. And yeah, so different animals have different areas that their brain kind of is very attuned to, is very interested in. Like the star-nosed mole creature that like buries underground, like its fingers on its nose are like really, really exaggerated in the brain, like similar to the mouth of the human here. So in other words, like the signals in an environment that matter to us like shape us, and this is kind of like how I'm thinking about things. And then when it comes to like audiovisual stuff, it's like, to what extent can we reason visually, or to what extent can we reason sonically? There's like these limitations. Like if you only stare at this image, like you can reason about it because there's like symbols and stuff like that, but it's hard to really think, like the way that we think with symbols is usually multimodal. So that's, okay, I'll get more into this. So here's a little like provocation. What is your first audiovisual training experience that you've ever had, if you can remember it? Like, yeah. Does anyone have guesses?
I mean, I can think about it as one part and the other part. I have a harder time thinking about them together. Like, this is maybe not the first, but the one that like I really remembered was taking my first actual painting class and learning about colors and light and like how things further away are more purple and things closer up are more red, and like seeing it for the first, like training my eyes to see that was something that I never recognized before, and I feel like I was looking around the world with a different lens.
Exactly. Nice. That's a great example. Yeah. Anyone else have like similar, or maybe, yeah, just more generally like sensory training like moments where you're like, oh, now I see this thing that I didn't notice before, or hear this thing that I didn't notice?
Similar experience before film, like learning how to look at like how a film is constructed and the different parts, like montage and then focus and then the distance of the shots and framing, yeah. So
Cool.
after I found like when watching a film, I could see stuff that I was just like unconsciously just processed before.
Yeah, exactly. Nice. And interesting, those are both spatial. Like you're pointing out a distance thing, you also point out a distance thing. So we could argue that even though it's visual, it's still like there's some multimodal thing, multiple senses going on to create like a spatial coherent thing. Anyone have audio like things, like hearing something that maybe changed your auditory perception?
In my first CCRMA class that I took, there was a speaker who came in and talked about how bad the quality of sound is in TV. And I went back and I watched like one of my favorite shows, and then I was like, oh my gosh, I can hear so much background noise, and like I didn't realize that the sound was so bad until someone like pointed it out to me.
Yeah, it's really amazing how good we are at just like tuning out. Like we really don't give a lot of attention to our senses, like in that sense. Like we're, if you're watching something, your attention goes to like the media's content, like maybe the meaning of it, or like the jokes that are happening, or like it can sort of grab our attention. Like we don't really notice these things easily, I think. So yeah, that's a really good point. And
for me, it was definitely not the first one, but this is what I'm remembering. Maybe in high school, I went to this VJ show. It was a UK band who was playing with a VJ, and I was just like so blown away by how tight the audiovisual relationships were, you know, crafted. But that's a very specific, like, you know, technological audiovisual.
So it was like the mapping of like how quickly. Nice. And did it change like other things that you sensed later in the world?
It's just
or
more for me as like, I guess like on my artistic track, it kind of like
influence something. Yeah, like some kind of aesthetic influence. Cool. So this is a new terrain for me, but I'm really excited about this stuff, so I'm gonna go into it. So my answer to this question is like language. And what's interesting about language is like we get trained to associate symbols and sounds from a really young age. And again, it's similar to how we've pointed out, we kind of just like forget how crazy that is, how strange it is that it's almost like if you see the letter A, you can't not hear A. Like it's like that mapping in your brain, in your sort of sensory memory is like really tight. Similar like how you're pointing out, there's like a mapping between these things. But if you see a symbol that you don't recognize, you won't have any sound associated with it until you like learn that language and all that stuff. So, but like, yeah, this is already two modes, right? It's visual, it's auditory, and they're just like so tightly linked. And that's kind of like how we are as a species. Like we are so into that. Most humans, I mean, not all humans, but most humans like learn to use language, and this is like fundamental to how we communicate. And it's in our biologies too. Like so there's a lot of studies that look at how the brain changes with language acquisition, all this stuff. And then of course language is a big deal now because of LLMs, but that's like a tangent, which we're just not going to focus on that because there's enough of that. But thinking about like this as like, oh, we already have this sort of scaffolding of like associating shapes. Like symbols are just abstract shapes. Like there's nothing, that crazy, that special about them. It's just that we repeat them over and over and over. They're like coherent, and we associate them with a sound. And that's like forms the basis of like all this stuff. So I've been just playing with that. This became sort of like more of just an artistic, like exploratory thing. Just thinking about like how, if you see like random patterns of shapes, like you might think it's beautiful. It might remind you of like stars, or to me it looks like, when the ocean like washes up on the sand and there's like those foamy blobs that are like left over. And there's these patterns in nature, abstract patterns, like all the time. Again, like as I started out saying, like we're in a really rich sensory world. We just like aren't paying attention to it that much. So like you walk around, you see like rocks on the ground and they have these like abstract shapes, but we don't have any like association there with that. So it just kind of like washes through our consciousness. We don't notice it. But as you work more and more in some kind of artistic way with stuff, like you might start to associate like, oh, that's actually this like fractal that I know about, or like, oh, I know that this is like this mapping of like these numbers, or like, so you might get like a geometric or like some other mapping to it. But you also could like train your senses to like understand, I guess, more information in the world around you. There's this like Buddhist monk that I really like, Thich Nhat Hanh, and he says like, you don't need to read books that much. Like go outside, read the trees, read the sky, read the ground. And I always think that's really beautiful, just like taking that in a really serious way. Like, what does he mean? Like, read that. Like, you can't read it because you don't have associations with it. You don't spend time in these patterns. But we do spend time with words. Our whole lives we spend time with text and words, and like, so like it's not like we aren't reading. And so, I mean, all reading is great, I think, but it's just like, how are we absorbing meaning from the signals around us? So anyway, so I've been playing around with like making these abstract shapes and then like moving them towards words. Like, maybe you can sort of recognize what this word is, maybe not. Can anyone guess? Or
Okay.
yeah, it says okay. So like just kind of like going back and forth and like trying to get at this space in between, like before you recognize that it's a letter, but it's like abstract, but it's almost a letter, and kind of like thinking about how, like, oh, if I did this over and over, would that train me? Or like, what does that do for just becoming more aware of like how I attend to the world. This is one that it's still kind of in progress, but I'm hoping to like refine it more, where it's like just vowel sounds and then breaking the vowel sounds down into like sound that's very abstract, and also visuals that are very abstract, and like again trying to get at the space like before you notice that it's a vowel, or trying to kind of like break down that mapping that's very sort of hardwired in us. So I can kind of show also like I can show you what I work with, because I'm sure you've learned different tools to like do this type of stuff. So I use Blender, and Blender is open source, and I love Blender. It's very annoying to work with. It will always be annoying, even when you get really good at it. It's still annoying, but I love it because I feel like A, it's open source. B, and you know what that means, I'll talk about more later. But B, like it's not actually made for audio-visual performance, so you kind of have to like hack things together to make it do what you want to do. And this process is very, I think, fulfilling and interesting. So what I do is I use geometry nodes, which is like the visual coding stuff that you see at the bottom. And this like allows me to like vary. So the letters are also meshes, like geometric meshes. And I can like vary the noise going into the mesh generation, and that's like how I'm getting into like, oh, now it's just like bubbly rock things, and then bringing it back to like recognizable letters. And then I get these values here from sound. And that's just through OSC. So like if you use Max or whatever else, you could use the same OSC like pathways. And I just use like Python scripts. I'm not sure if this will work, but let's try it. I use Python scripts just to get the audio and do an FFT, which you probably all know what that is, right? Fast Fourier transform, and just get the different signals. And then I send that over different OSC channels so I can do weird things with it. But I really want to make it, sorry, it's, this is the wrong file. I really want to make it like not just FFT, like maybe do more interesting signal processing, but FFT is just like what I know. So let's see if it oh, did I? Yeah. Blender has this thing called Node OSC, and that allows you to
put the OSC values, basically just map them into the geometry nodes, which is very convenient. Thankfully, somebody made this node OSC thing. Otherwise, this would be actually really challenging. But with open source software, it's great because like somebody has made something for it, you know, and it's just, you can kind of customize the software in like at a really deep level. Whereas, I mean, I guess in theory you still could with like Macs, like maybe you write to the people who work there and you say like, hey, will you build this thing? But I really love the open source nature of this because like there's a community that has allowed me to make this. Like it's not just me making it, it's like everyone who's helped build these tools. So it's like, yeah, kind of working, not great. I'm still kind of working on this, but in theory, like the sound could be more tightly mapped to like abstracting the words and coming back in.
Is it taking from your like speaker?
It's taking, yeah, from my computer speaker. I have these plugged in, but it was like not enjoying was not picking up on the USB from this. Yeah, I'm not sure why it doesn't see that. Oh, maybe because it's not plugged in, that could be. Eventually that might work better.
For the mapping, or for the
yeah.
signal processing that you're doing, are you doing like vowel detection for the words that are coming through, which then would map to like the different vowel visuals?
Yeah,
okay.
That's what I'm ultimately doing. But this was just, for this demo, it's like just sound going in, get the FFT and do the geometric thing. But yeah, so I'll show you more like the speech recognition part of it. And this is actually a great time to be talking to you because I'm like in between these projects. And you'll see that like, and this is something as artists we can talk about where it's like you build out one part of, you know, like I've built out the geometric part and now I'm kind of building out the vowel detection part. And I also have the speech recognition stuff. And then it's like, because they're modular things that I've built out, like it's less of an overwhelming process. It's more about just like, oh, now I just need to connect these pieces together. But anyway, that's a tangent. But yeah, eventually it will be like you speak or you sing, and in the person's voice, like there's vowels coming out, and then it picks that up, but also somehow breaks it down as it's.
How do you want that to affect the visual letters that you see?
That's a good question. So I'm trying to get it where it just kind of like breaks down. So I turn this off. Like there's probably other sounds going on, then as a vowel emerges, it starts to take the letter form. And then switching that into different languages. So there's different symbols that like maybe aren't as easy to map for English speakers. And it's like, yeah, so it's a whole like area of exploration where it's like, ultimately what I'm trying to get at is like, you hear the vowel, you recognize the letter, but then you also are in this space that's in between. That's like, can't quite tell, and it's sort of, you start to see what builds up your own vowel recognition processes like in your perception. So that's like, yeah, that's like what I've been working on, not quite there yet, but oh, whoops. And this is what you'll see later tonight, which is kind of like before getting to the vowel part, just doing speech recognition and then translation. So like there's like the English part, so and this one I could probably demo just with my computer sound. Let's see. So okay. Let's see if it's working. It's because it's just getting computer audio, it works. And then there's like stuff that happens with the letters that it's picking up from the speech recognition. And so I did speech recognition, and then I also used like Google Translate's API for like translating it later into like multiple languages. And I think that's like a whole other topic of discussion, like how do we use these APIs and like what does it mean to use these things, but if we do good stuff with it, is it okay, and like this type of thing. But yeah, this is like where I'm at with just the translation part. Ultimately I want to like put all these components together into one thing that's just this like more coherent, like it's one blob that changes shape as the sound is happening, and kind of messes with your word detection. Okay, so yeah, this is like what's going to happen tonight too, but with all this stuff going too.
What is the relation between the shape that is formed in the center and the words? Is it, I'm curious.
So the words coming in are changing this, but because it has different like abstractions that I'm adding to it, you can't really tell except sometimes when it's fully formed into like a word. So, let's see. Okay, so you can kind of see, hopefully it will change, and it takes just the last word because I couldn't do a whole sentence. And I have it sort of like sometimes it's reactive to speech, but sometimes it just takes a word that I chose because I liked the geometric reactions. But here you can see it's like it's mapped to speech, and it's like kind of noisy at the edges of it. And then it goes to like standard words that I programmed in there. Yeah, any other questions about this? Yeah, there's here, where's the second window? I just wanted to make it full screen for you, but you'll see it later tonight. Yeah, Blender has this real-time rendering engine now. It didn't used to always have that. I used to spend hours just like banging my head against the wall with Blender, just being like, I hate you. And now I feel vindicated because finally I can use Blender for this, because they built a real-time engine, and because of this node OSC thing, and also geometry nodes like got so much better in the last year. You used to need to know Python, Blender Python, and like write your own scripts. And I used to do that, and it sucked and took me forever. But now there's just a node that I drag in, and if I want to customize it and add like a crazy script, I still could. But like I just drag in, like there's nodes that I used to literally, like I used to try to program these nodes, and now I just have this noise texture node here that I can just drag in with these different options. So yeah, I mean, I really like appreciate the Blender programmers, because they're just working out of passion to make this cool stuff. So I really appreciate that. And yeah, and then we can use it as artists and do stuff like this. But yeah, that said, like there's Max and Jitter, and there's these other programs too. And I think I don't know. I mean, I personally think it's good to stick with one software just because you learn its annoying quirks, and like it's gonna have to become part of your world in a way. But also it's good to try different software and just see what, I think, you know, when you're in this program where you get to learn all these tools, like just learn all of them now, you know, and then figure out which one really works for you, and then you kind of commit to that one. Yeah. Okay, so that's that. Why do this? Yeah, so back to like, why should we do this? I mean, we like it, but also like why? And I guess I think that when we do performances, like there's this really special thing that happens, which is like we are usually in a group of people, and we're all like attending to the same thing. Like we're all like watching this thing. Like someone's not going to talk to you about something, or if they are, like they're being kind of rude. But like usually we're just attending to this thing. Like we're giving it our attention because it's an event, because we have this sort of cultural like thing around it of like we're at a show, now we pay attention. And I think that's already like a really, really special thing, because we're a social species. You know, and I don't really like this science, but like arguably they say that we kind of evolved in social groups, that a lot of our intelligence is because of our social capacities as humans. Although probably there were non-social human types too, like there's all kinds of things. But the story of our evolution is that we are very social. At least now we continue to be a very social species. But our attention is like very susceptible to the media of our world right now. Like, you know, like we've pointed out earlier, like there's all these examples of like, oh, I totally wouldn't have noticed that, you know, the sound quality until I like learned about this thing. And I think that's really important because, like, again, we're in this world, there's climate change, there's all kinds of like difficult things that we're gonna have to face together. And like our primary technology is our bodies. It's like what we can pay attention to, what we can hear, what we can notice, what we can tell like from day to day, like, oh, the weather's slightly changed, or like, oh, this plant that used to be here is like not here, or smells different, and these types of mappings to the world, like we really used to have. And I think now we're kind of in this very alienated type of lifestyle where we're very susceptible to media, we don't really pay attention to things. But I think that when we collectively go to shows and we listen to something, like it changes us. Like now we've learned to hear this sound. Or maybe it's even just like a personal aesthetic thing where it's like, oh, I just really like this, like, I just really like, you know, the way Otakar, like their rhythms happen or something. Like, and it's just an aesthetic thing. But even if you think it's just an aesthetic thing, like I just think it's cool or I just like it, it's not just an aesthetic thing, because underneath that is a sensory attunement. Like, oh, I notice this sound, like I hear this particular thing. or I see this particular thing. And I think that happened to me personally with like digital geometry. Like I kept seeing all this digital geometry and then I just kept being like, I'm interested in it, why? And it was like a spatial, like sensory thing that I was like after. So in a way, like the art that we see, the art that we like, our friends' work, like it kind of awakens our own sensory system, and it kind of cultivates what we're able to perceive in the world. Like I had a friend who would always make these like really high-pitched sounds, and I can't say I really liked them or anything, but as I was walking around the world, I started hearing like, oh, this like weird insect sound, and these high-pitched sounds kind of like, I could hear them now. Not that I changed my ears in any way, but I changed my attention to the sound. So now I'd be like, oh, there's that high-pitched sound, what is that? So in a way, we're like expanding each other's like sensory regime when we do weird things with media. So it all depends on like, when you make your work, like what do you want to foreground? What do you want a background? Like, what is the important sort of like signals of the world that you are interested in, that you want people to like be able to notice? And like, that's kind of how I approach my work, is like, I don't want to just do some random thing. I want to like think about, what am I foregrounding? Like what kind of edge am I pushing for people to sort of grow in their ability to attend to it? And what do I want to background too? Because you're always kind of backgrounding something too when you take up a performative space. And then, yeah, formalized and informal, like, what does it mean for something to become formal? Like, certain sounds get formalized by technology, by, phones, and like, yeah, like one of my friends, like, I don't know, you know how the computer makes like a error sound when you hit a key? My friend Arjun, like, made a song that just like had that sound over and over and over, and it like really changed the way I heard it. So that's like a formal sound, but you can make it informal by like resampling it and doing something to it. And then there's all kinds of informalized signals. Like there's all kinds of sounds that we just tune out, that it's like, oh, like, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, even, our bodies, like sound from the body are very, very dampened. Like we don't, want to hear each other's body sounds or something. But like that's an informal sound. That's a sound that's present, and like how are we relating to that sound? So you can make it formal by like making a piece, a compositional piece that like has like some weird breathing stomach sound in it. And now all of a sudden it becomes like a sound we're willing to listen to and like kind of hold and hear. Yeah, so we can shape our capacities to attend to signals in the world together. And maybe I would say we have a responsibility to each other to like shape how we're attending to things as humans who are like within this very media cultured like world. Yeah. So is this the world we want to live in? And so this is like just another demo I was gonna show you. So as I said earlier, like, oh, it's still, let's turn this off. As I said earlier, like the cool thing about having a like tech world that you're working with, you can make these modular components, then you can like reuse them. So I wanted to make a music video, and I was like, the lyrics were important, so I was like keyframing every single sentence, and I was like, why am I doing this? I have a speech recognition thing, just set it up for the music, so that makes, saved a lot of work time. Oops. So now I can use computer sound. So then that makes a music video, but it's still kind of messy. And yeah, I mean, I can stop there. I think we've. Okay. So yeah, so now you kind of heard what the sonic work I do is like, and I was thinking we could, like, another sensory thing to talk about is like song structure versus noise. And like, I really think that, I mean, I don't know how other people feel about this, but I think that correlations in sound are like enough to create song structure. Even if the sound is totally just noise, once you like repeat that noise enough times or in enough of a patterned way, it kind of registers, at least to my brain, as a song. And with Shatter pattern, like, I've performed like for many years now, and like some people are like, oh, you make pop music, and I'm like, okay. And then other people are like, oh, you make noise music, and I'm like, okay. And I think it's really cool that, again, to like stay in an in-between state where it's like, wait, is it a song or is it noise? Is it improvised or is it not improvised? And like kind of jamming our assumptions or our expectations about that. And I think that's productive because, as I said earlier, it's like it makes us kind of reflect on our own sort of like capacity to sense these things. So like I'll listen to like Marianne Amiche or like Roland Kine, where it's like these noise compositions, like, or just noise landscapes, and like it's like a different kind of listening than when you listen to a song, a pop song or something. And so thinking about like how you train that kind of listening, like how much noise do you have to listen to before you start hearing a song in it almost, or maybe you don't hear a song in it, but you start hearing it differently. It sort of becomes familiar in a song-like way, even though it's still just noise to you. So I think that's a really like amazing question to explore just while you listen to music in general. Like, because music is just this attentional framework. It's like somebody took this sound and they said, you pay attention to this, you know? And it could be anything, but it's like now you're paying attention to it. And when you pay attention to it, you're using your senses to sort of like decipher meaning from it. And so you're gonna effort to like find meaning or find emotion or find something from it that like adds to your experience. And so like that process is really interesting because like, yeah, it kind of like expands your ability to do that as you listen to more and more strange sounds that like make no sense, and then you realize like it does connect for you or something. Or maybe it develops a way of listening that's like a spacious field of listening that is actually preferable to songs. Like maybe you don't like songs anymore, now you just like the noise space because like you've become intimate in the way you listen to it. Like you're listening to it in a way that's different than pop. And then can you listen to a pop song with the open field of attention, and like then do you hear it differently? And so like there's a whole terrain of stuff there that we can discuss. But yeah, like something I think about with music is like how far can we take it? And again, just like the vowel thing for me, it's like, can I go from a song to just noise and back and like still hold like a framework of meaning? And I think that expands our sonic capacity too when we do that. Yeah. And I think I touched on this, just like why use open source software. I don't know if people know AV Club in San Francisco, but they do like live coding, and I really like it because sometimes my favorite thing is like when it fails, when the computer just breaks. And because it's AV Club, like everybody just cheers and claps, and it's like a wonderful thing when the computer breaks. Like we're all stoked. And then they have to like reopen the computer, and it's like awkward. And I really want to cultivate that because I think it's like makes us aware that technology like isn't fail-proof. It's something we built, it's a tool, it's not a powerful thing. And I think it's important to kind of like delegitimize technology a little bit. Of course, we're using it, it's very important to us. We're using it to break signals down, bring signals together, map things together. Like, we need these tools. But we're in a world where there's this like assumption that technology is like perfect and powerful and like doesn't fail. And it's important to remind ourselves like it does fail, and it should, I just think it's very powerful to like accept that failure more publicly and just being like, yeah, this thing's broken. Because like it also makes it more alive. Like this isn't just, we're not working for a tech company. We don't have to make it work perfectly. Like, and it's almost more alive, more enriching when it breaks, because like you see that it's not sort of like set in stone. It's not like a preset. It's not something that is just a tech company made it. It's like we're artists. We're hacking things together. Like, let the things break. It's fun. And yeah, we can get more into that. So I like to call it like glossy tech versus lossy tech, and like using both. Hito Steril has this really cool paper that's called In Defense of Poor Images, where she talks about like low resolution images and why low resolution is such an interesting thing, and this kind of push for higher and higher resolution in our media, and like why do we why do we want our media to simulate reality? Like maybe media should be like sensorially different. Like maybe it should be low resolution. Maybe it should be distinguishable from the real, like the other world, not the real world, but like the other world in which there are like natural signals and analog sensory systems and stuff. So that's another like discussion point. And just some conclusions and tips like for life and stuff. I really think making like modular procedural components that you can rework with is important. I don't think, like, I have like visions and then I work for the vision, but I don't think artistic vision is like always what inspires me. I think it's also just like playing with what's available in the tools themselves. So like visions are great, but when you start kind of committing to a technical practice, like then you have these components that you can always sort of get inspired by because they're there and they might break in some weird way, and like it's kind of like feeds your own practice. You're making your own little sensory ecological system, so that's kind of how I think about it. And make sure you name things properly so you can refer back to them if you take my advice. And yeah, just like, yeah, it's worth it to like have components you can reuse. And how can signals be mapped in increasingly sensitive, precise, and alive ways is like the open question. And that's it.